For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight, if you continue in the faith grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel, which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister, who now rejoice in my sufferings for you, and fill up that which is behind of the afflictions of Hamashiach in my flesh for his body's sake, which is the church, whereof I am made a minister according to the dispensation of God, which is given to me for you to fulfill the word of God, even the mystery which had been hid from ages and from generations, but now is made manifest to his saints, to whom God would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Hamashiach in you, the hope of glory, whom we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Hamashiach Yahushai. Whereunto I also labor, striving according to his working, which worketh in me mightily. Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahushai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahushai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahushai, Barakati Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Ba Rachahakodash, Call Thapa Arath, Hawad Wahaloyam, Rawatam Yatla, Allahayanawa, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushaba, Rachahakodash. And what I just said in the Lashwan Kodash being the ancient Paleo Hebrew, or in other words, the true biblical Hebrew for holy tongue or language. And what I just said is all glory, honor, and praises abundantly and continuously to our power, Yahweh, the true name of our Heavenly Father, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls God, in the name of his only begotten Son, our Savior, our Messiah, our Deliverer, Yahushai, Hamashiach, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls Jesus Christ, in, or in other words, through the Holy Spirit. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching and pushing this truth throughout the four corners of the earth. To the hopeful elect, the 144,000 and the 1/3, as well as the rest of the elect, scattered abroad amongst the heathen nations to the four corners of the earth, east, north, south, and west. To you I say, Shalom. This is your brother Ra'ib Tazadakwa coming back at you again, all through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai, with another lesson, another in transit lesson, all through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim Ashah, Yahweh Ratazah, Yahweh willing. It is going to be edifying and encouraging for you Achim and any Achwath, brothers and sisters that may be listening and or watching. All right, now the first thing I'm going to say is that this is an in transit and I am on the road. So if there's any pauses, hesitations, or delays, you know why. And I do appreciate your patience and understanding in that regard. And say the water, which is the ancient Paleo Hebrew for thank you. I say the water in advance. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to say is that this is part 40 in this ongoing lesson series. The main dominating essential point of the lesson series being, all right, is that salvation is indeed only for Israel. all right, natural born Israelites, which those are the only Israelites that exist. Okay, and I say that because there are those who would say there's a such thing as spiritual Israel, right? And there is no such thing. There is no precedence for that anywhere in the scriptures. All right, and I dealt with that, if my memory serves me correctly, and I believe that it does. I dealt with that in part 11. So if you think there's a such thing as spiritual Israel, then you need to go and watch part 11. All right, and Yahweh Razah, you'll be edified with that, subject to the Spirit, and whether or not you've been given ears to hear and eyes to see or not. All right, now, so we're going to be moving on tonight, and just to give a quick rundown, I'm not going to give the same type of rundown I normally give. I'm just going to make it very brief because this isn't in transit. I'm short on time, and I have to get up early tomorrow for an appointment. So, I want to get a move on with this lesson tonight. I got a tractor trailer bearing down on me. Let me pick up a little bit of speed. And I do believe that is a chariot up in front of me. You see that star. The chariots, and when it talks about the North Star in the scriptures, that was a chariot. There was no actual star. It looked like a star, yes, but it was no actual star. A lot of the times the chariots will cloak themselves as clouds, and that's pursuant to the 104th Psalm in the 3rd verse. And there's multiple times throughout the scriptures, like Matthew 24, 29, 30, and 31, and also Revelation 1 and 7, where, right along with that, Psalms 104 and 3, it's talking about clouds, but those clouds are not literal clouds. Those clouds are the chariots, the vehicles of the fourth dimension, the spiritual realm, right? But one of the things, in addition to looking like clouds, they'll also look like stars, okay? And there's a star that's in front of me. I've curved now, but I can still see it. It's very bright. It's about the only one you can see in the sky because it's been an overcast day, but it's very bright, and I can see all the different colors. If you know anything about stars, stars are like one color, okay? And I haven't gone over this in a while, but obviously you have the yellow stars, which, the light can look close to white, but it's really yellow, like our star. But you also have red stars and blue stars, I do believe. I believe that's it, because I haven't gone over this in a while. But you don't have multicolored stars. So how is it that's the reason why that song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, most people aren't mindful of the next line. The next line is, how I wonder what you are. Well, why do you wonder what something is if you already know what it is? It's a little star. So why are you wondering what the little star is? You already know what the little star is. It's a star. No, it's not a star. And they know the songwriter knew it wasn't a star. That's why it's written, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are. What are you? I'm calling you a star because you look like a star and you're twinkling all over the place, right? But I know you're not a star, right? And that's what I see. And I see them all the time, and sometimes they'll move, and most of the time they don't, but sometimes they'll move, and sometimes they'll appear, zip across the sky, and disappear, okay? And sometimes I'll be looking right at it, and then it'll take off, okay? These are the chariots, okay? They're always there. In the scriptures, they're also referred to as the Heavenly Father's eyes, all right? But I'm just touching on it because there's one right in front of me, all kinds of colors, red, yellow, green, all right? And somebody wants to drive next to me, all right? These heathen, man. These heathen, okay? I'm trying to do a lesson. I can't have a heathen want to be my highway driving buddy. Get on down the road, okay? One of the most annoying things is for these heathen to be coming up on me, and they're going to pass, but then when they get next to me or behind me or on my flank, they just stop and match my speed. And I have to pay attention to them, which just distracts my focus from the lesson. It's very annoying. It's like, just keep going, And I'm dealing with a tractor trailer now. Actually, it's a bus I see now. And they did the same thing. I picked up speed, and then they picked up speed. And then they get next to me, they slow down. Okay, now they're gone. All right, so Salakia for that. I just got to deal with that, right? You see there that it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's like it's just me and this bus and this one car, this one goofy ass car on the road, and they're going to be right around me. So I got to lose these losers so I can focus on the lesson. Anyway, so let's get back into the topic, because I really want to make progress on it. So what we've been doing is we've been laying groundwork now, and we're about in the third month of doing this. This is part 40. A lot of edification. Don't bother scoffing, but do you, because you're going to scoff anyway, right? A lot of edification that you would never be willing to search out, but yet you're going to speak against it, right? But go ahead and do you, because you're going to get the judgment that you got coming with that, right? But a lot of edification. This is part 40, right? Yep. And so we've been laying groundwork and foundational work, and you can check out the parts. There's a lot of groundwork that's been laid. This is all preparatory for making the point. But while we're doing all this groundwork and foundational work, we're making the point anyway. All right, we're supposed to be making a point next. That's the next thing we're going to do. But we're making the point anyway, because you can't not make the point. You can say, well, we're just going to lay some groundwork before we get into the main point. And that's what we've been doing. But as you're laying the groundwork, the point's everywhere. It's everywhere. You can't not make the point. So, okay, we're going to make the point for a while, but then we're going to get back to the groundwork, okay? And then like 2 or 3 parts later, we're getting back to the groundwork. I mean, the point's everywhere, okay? So, but the focus of this is laying groundwork. So we've been doing that. And we're now at the part where we're laying the last piece of groundwork, the last part of the foundation, which is establishing that there's 2 groups of Gentiles, 2 groups of foreigners, 2 groups of heathen, 2 groups of strangers, which we've already done, and it only took us 1 part to do that. We did that in part 15, and it was like one verse. All you need, 1 verse. And we did bring out 2 verses. We got more than that, but I'm just saying we brought out 2 verses because either one of those verses gets the job done by itself, all by itself. And not only does each of the verses by itself establish that there's 2 groups of Gentiles, foreigners, heathen, and strangers, but in Salakia, my sinuses are still a little stuffy, so since I can't really too well breathe through my nose, I'm talking, right? So it makes me a little short of breath. So I had to stop and breathe, There you go, right? And so since either one of those makes the point, not only does either one of those verses make the point, but they also both tell you who the other group of Gentiles, foreigners, heathens, and strangers is. Everybody knows that one group of Gentiles, foreigners, heathens, and strangers is the natural born. Those are the ones that everybody assumes that the scripture is talking about when they see those terms. They always assume that the scripture is talking about natural born, and they don't know the mystery of the Gentiles, which is that there's 2 groups of Gentiles. And the mystery of the Gentiles also goes into the fact that the Gentiles would ultimately be given a way back into the truth. Hence the word reconcile, which tells you who the second group of Gentiles, foreigners, heathens, and strangers is. The second group of Gentiles, heathen, foreigners, and strangers is actually Israelites being called and referred to as Gentiles, heathen, foreigners, and strangers, although they're Israelites. And St. John 7:35 makes that point very clear, and so does Matthew 18 and 17. They both stand on their own merit with regards to making that point. Both that there's 2 groups and who the other group is, Israelites, okay? And so we brought those out, and ever since then, ever since part 15, this is part 40, we just been working that point home, just working it in and working it in and working it in and working it in. And we're gonna work it in some more tonight, right? And I don't know, I think we probably only about halfway through working that point in, because there's a lot that you can go into. The point's already made, but we're just going everywhere. We're just going a lot of places as the Spirit leads, and showing you that, so when you read this and you thought it was talking about the natural born heathen, it's actually talking about Israelites that are being referred to as heathen, foreigners, and strangers, and Gentiles, and just bringing out the edification, okay? But once you understand there's 2 groups, St. John 7:35, Matthew 18 and 17, then you have to understand that anytime you see any of those 4 terms, you have to make sure you know which group it's talking about. It's 2 groups. You cannot just assume that it's talking about the group that you think it is because you only thought it was one. You got to know it's 2 groups. Which group is it talking about? And you have to prove it. You have to know, okay? But you already lost because you didn't even know there was 2 groups. So that means, by necessity, some of the times you thought it was talking about natural born heathen, and it wasn't. It was talking about Israelites. And you don't even know you just found out there's two groups. So you don't even know when you were right and when you were wrong. Well, I'll make it easy for you. You're always wrong. Because even when you're right, you're wrong. Because you don't have the whole understanding. You don't have the truth. So even if you was right, because it was talking about natural born heathen in the precept that you was reading at that particular moment, all right. But even if you write about it in that precept, you're still wrong because you lack the understanding. Okay. And a lot of the times, especially in the New Testament, it's actually talking about Israelites, not natural born. Okay. A lot of the times, and a good number of the times in the Old Testament too. May even be the majority of the time. I haven't run the numbers like that, but a lot of the time in the Old Testament too. So you're wrong a lot. And even when you're right, you're still wrong. Okay? So let's get into this. So that's what we're doing now. And what we've been doing with the precepts that we've been in is we just broke down the whole chapter of Romans 9, the whole 9th chapter of the book of Romans. Okay? We're still technically breaking down the last few verses, but it's pretty much done, right? So we got down here, and we started at verse 1, and we got all the way down here, and we were in verses 26 through, not 26, I'm sorry, Slakia, 29 through 33, yep, 29 through 33. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles, we already proved that these Gentiles are Israelites, which followed not after righteousness, have attained to righteousness. Strange. That's exactly the opposite of what you would expect. That these Gentiles, now you know there's two groups, so you got to make sure you know which group it's talking about. We've already done that a bunch of times. This is the 40th part now. You're going to have to check out some of the other parts if you want the proof. Okay, these Gentiles are Israelites, but they didn't seek after righteousness, but they got it. Even the righteousness which is of faith. That's how they got it, through faith. But Israel, which would be the Israelites that continued to keep the laws, commandments, and statutes, while the Gentiles would be the Israelites that had abandoned the laws, commandments, and statutes, had abandoned our heritage, okay, and had the mindset of Gentiles. That's why they're being called Gentiles. See? So both the Gentiles and Israel are both Israel. Obviously Israel's Israel, but the Gentiles are Israelites too. Okay? These Gentiles, okay? Okay, because we've already proved it. You see Gentiles, well, which group is it talking about? Natural born, or is it the Israelites in the Gentile state of mind? This is Israelites in the Gentile state of mind. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness, hath not attained to the law of righteousness. Okay? And that's opposite as well. You would think, well, those that stayed in the land and continued to keep the laws, commandments, and statutes and continue to hold fast to our heritage and our customs, they would get righteousness. But no, they didn't. And this gives you the reason why. Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith. We already broke all this down. We're getting precept passages for it. We already broke it down itself. We already broke these verses down, but we got the precept passages for it. I'm just making sure you know where we're at. And there's that chariot. I'm just making sure you know where we're at. Okay? Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith, because they didn't seek it by faith. The very thing that the very way or means by which the Gentile Israelites got righteousness. Let me see here. Right. The very way that the Gentile Israelites got righteousness is, which is through faith, is the very thing that the Israelites that remained in the land, continued to keep the laws, commandments, and statutes. That's the very thing that they didn't do. Okay? And that's the reason why they didn't get it. Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith. That's why they didn't get it. But as it were by the works of the law. Because see, the works of the law, the deeds of the law was never intended to get us to salvation and deliverance. It was never intended to for us to be justified by that. That wasn't the purpose of us being given the law. Okay? Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. For they stumbled at that stumbling stone, which is Yahushua. Okay? And you can get 33 as well. But this sent us to Galatians 3. I'm just giving you a rundown of where we've been. And we started at, what's that? The highlighted portion here. 23 down to the end of the chapter. We still got these 2 verses here to get, 28, 29. Right now, we've gotten down to 27, but this 24 was the point, okay? Along with 23 setting it up, 23 and 24, and then also you can put the 25 with it as well, but the main point is in 24, so let's just get that. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster, okay? So in other words, the law was to keep us until faith showed up. And then when faith showed up, the law would hand us off to faith. And now faith would take it from there. Not that the law is done away with. That's why we got to finish Romans 3. Okay? Because see, that's why people would get the wrong idea reading Paul's epistles. Right? Because Paul is talking on a very high level. That's why you always have to be mindful of the warning that the Apostle Peter gave about Paul's epistles. Okay, you cannot come willy-nilly in Paul's epistles. You cannot be coming in Paul's epistles all super confident that you understand what he's talking about. Read 2 Peter 3, 15 and 16. Okay? It's very, very important warning. We've already gotten it multiple times. I'm not going to get it tonight again. I've already got it like 3 times, I want to say, maybe even 4 in this lesson series. And we'll probably get it again, but not tonight, unless the Spirit makes me. But you got to be careful in Paul's epistles, because you will get the wrong idea. You will totally misunderstand what the Apostle Paul is saying. And then you'll be a heretic, teaching and believing damnable heresies and getting the damnation that comes along with it. Okay? So when faith showed up, then let's read 23. But before faith came in, we were kept under the law as a substitute teacher. Like a substitute teacher, a schoolmaster, right? A substitute teacher is a good term that we would use today. Shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. So we were, look at that way the NLT puts it. That's pretty good too. We were kept in protective custody, so to speak, until the way of faith was revealed. Okay? Wherefore, the law was our schoolmaster, substitute teacher, to bring us unto Hamashiach. Okay? To get us to the point where Hamashiach, Yahushai, was born of a virgin, Ilama, which in the Hebrew means a young woman of marriageable age, not a newly married bride. You look the word up in the book of Isaiah for the Hebrew, and it tells you right in there that the idea of unspotted virginity is not N-O-T, not that which this word conveys. In other words, this word isn't talking about a virgin in the sense of which you would think a virgin to be today in the modern English. It's not that. It's a young woman of marriageable age who has had sex or not. Okay, because you don't know. So you would call her an Ilama. Maybe she's had sex, maybe she hasn't. But if you know she has, well then it's still Ilama. Okay? But if you know she hasn't, well then it's a different word. It's Bathwala. That's the word that means a virgin that's never had sex. Unspotted virginity, never having had intercourse with a man. That's not the word behind virgin in the book of Isaiah. All right. So, but when Yahushua showed up, born of a young woman of marriageable age, a newly married bride, okay, which means if you're a newly married bride, that means you've had sex. Your husband's laid down with you. The marriage is consummated. Okay, that's Ilama. Okay, and when he showed up, then now it's time to transit. The law hands us over to faith, and faith takes it from there. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us into Hamashiach, that we might be justified by faith. The law was never intended to get us, was never intended to the law was never intended to justify us. Okay? The law was never intended to justify us. Okay? And let me see here. Yeah. Thought that was here. Where was that? I know it's multiple places, but I thought it was also here, and I'm going down the road. Maybe it's a little further up, I think. Or I'm just not remembering right. And I'm going down the road, so I'm not going to try. Next thing you know, I'm swerving all over the place, right? But we know what it says, and it says it in Romans as well. We're going to get it in a second, but I know it's someplace else also, okay? Therefore, by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified, okay? So the law was never intended to get us to salvation or deliverance or justification. The law was never intended. The law was intended to be a schoolmaster to get us to the point where faith would take over. And what's the point at which faith would take over? When Yahweh Shai showed up. See? So the law was to get us to that point. We could never get justification through the deeds of the law. And that was not the intent or the purpose of the law. That was not the purpose of the law. Right? So when Yahweh Shai shows up, we're supposed to transition from the deeds of the law, which was a schoolmaster to keep us under protective custody. That's not a bad way to put it, right? Until Yahweh Shai showed up and faith kicked in and took it from there. I don't want to say faith kicked in because it's always been about faith, but in a certain sense, you could say it kicked in because it came to the forefront. It was always in the background, but it came to the forefront. See? Right? So, wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us into a Mashiach, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster. Yay, we can do whatever we want. The law, we're out from under the law. We can just do whatever. No. Again, 2 Peter 3:15 and 16. And the Apostle Paul himself is going to make that plain over here, because from Galatians 3, we went to Romans 3. And while we were in Romans 3, we got a segment, we got a portion of Romans, the 3rd chapter, that was higher up. And when we got that higher up portion, which was here, 19 to 24, we went to Romans 7 as well to really drive that point home. But we read this whole portion right here, but we're going to skip those middle 3 verses and dig in right here, right? And so therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without, in other words, and not the deeds of the law. Okay? All right? So we don't get justification through the deeds of the law. It's by faith. Okay? All right? Truth be told, it's impossible to get justification through the deeds of the law because we can't do it. And if we keep the law, if we do the deeds of the law, but we don't do them born out of faith, it ain't gonna profit us. Right? But if we have faith, but we're fucking the law up all over the place, well, we're still good. For real, right? Because it's about that faith. But check it out. James, the Apostle James, wrote it and told you that faith without works is dead. So true faith is always going to produce righteous works. And the more your faith grows, the more you're going to keep the law better and better and better. But we're never going to do it perfect on this side. And even though we're doing it better and better as our faith grows and our wisdom and knowledge and understanding grows, we're still doing a horrible job on this side. Okay? Our righteousness is as filthy rags. See? This is why we need deliverance and salvation from these vile, corruptible bodies. Who shall deliver me from this body of death? I thank the Most High. Is it? Let me see here. I can't remember the way he said it, so let me just go over there and read it, because I don't want to say it wrong. Romans 7, at the end of that. We already came here. We came here too. I thank the Most High. That's what I thought it was. Okay. I thank the Most High through Yahweh Shah Mashiach, our Lord, out of 1 hour. So then with the mind, his spirit, the mind talking about our spirit, that's who we truly are. These bodies are just temporary tents, right? With the mind, his spirit that is inside of that body, giving it life. Okay. All right. The spirit that is housed in his mind, in his pineal gland. Okay, our spirits are located in our pineal glands. That's why they call it the third eye. Okay, so then with the mind, his spirit, I myself serve the law of the Most High, because that's what we want. That's what we're all about. But with the flesh, yeah, these vile corruptible bodies, the law of sin. See, and that's the dichotomy. That's the fight. Okay, these are the conditions of the battle, right? So going back over here. See, but then when you come down here, it gets into, we're not going to break this down now. I'm using this as a springboard for that opening precept passage. Okay. Is he the God or power of the Jews only? We understand that's talking about Israelites, right? Is he not also of the Gentiles? we see these terms, we got to know, is it talking about the natural born, or is it talking about the Israelite Gentiles, right? And we've already proven it. We've already proven it, man. These Gentiles here are Israelites. Yes, yea, of the Gentiles, the Gentile Israelites, that is, also. Okay? And we get down there seeing it as one power which shall justify the circumcision. That's the Israelites that remained in the land, keeping the laws, commandments, and statutes. And the uncircumcision. That's the Gentiles. The uncircumcision is the Gentile Israelites, because they were uncircumcised in heart. The scripture speaks about the circumcision of the heart. That's the circumcision that really matters. Notice that the Most High entered into a covenant with Abraham before he was circumcised, and he called. Let me make sure of that, because I'm just making sure I remember that correct. But he definitely called Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees before he was circumcised. Abraham didn't get circumcised to quite some time after that. Let me refresh my memory and make sure that what I said was correct. I know for a fact he was called out uncircumcised. I believe he entered into a covenant with him uncircumcised as well, and then he got circumcised shortly after that. See, so it's really about the circumcision of the heart that matters most. Okay, the circumcision of the flesh is a picture of the condition of the heart. So even if you do the circumcision of the flesh, but your heart isn't circumcised, you're still uncircumcised. Yeah, you're circumcised in the flesh, but that was just a picture of what really matters, which is the circumcision of the heart. So you're still uncircumcised. Your circumcision of the flesh is made uncircumcision. Okay? Because your heart's not right. See? So the circumcision of the flesh, it matters, yes. It's in the law, yes. But only to the extent that it represents the condition of your heart. And it's not required in this time. Anyway, it's not required in this time for salvation. That was the Jerusalem Council, Acts the 15th chapter. You can read about that. Okay, does that mean we just go, well, don't worry about getting circumcised? No, well, get circumcised. Okay, but is it a requirement for salvation? No. Okay, again, Abraham was called out of Ur of the Chaldees uncircumcised, and I'm about to confirm it right here. I just got to remember what chapter to go to. Abraham's treachery. Man, shut up. Shut up, man. What you talking about? Let me see here. Yeah, I just gotta remember what chapter it's in. I think it's coming up here real soon. I think it's like, nope, obviously not there. Let me see here. And that's why, it's hard for me to look for stuff while I'm going down the road. Let me see here. And let me see here. And bear with me a second. I'm gonna pull over here before I keep going down the road, because I just want to refresh my memory. I want to make sure that my memory is correct, but I'm pretty sure that and bear with me a second. I'm pretty sure that the covenant with Abraham was established while Abraham was uncircumcised. Okay. But of course, you should get circumcised if you can, get circumcised. It is a good thing to do. But the point is, it's not required for salvation, and it's the circumcision of the heart that matters most. Okay, the circumcision of the flesh is to be a picture or representation of what is already taking place in the heart. Okay, and that's why Abraham was circumcised in his heart. And that's why when he ultimately did get circumcised in the flesh, it just matched what already took place in his spirit, right? Because the physical is always a manifestation of the spiritual. Okay, that's what the physical is. The physical is a manifestation or a representation of the spiritual. Okay, if something's spiritually the case, it's always going to manifest in the physical. There'll be a delay. Okay, there can be a delay. But even if there's a delay, if you have spiritual eyes and you have discernment, you'll see it. You'll see it, even though it's a delay. Okay, everybody else can't really see it. Everything pretty much still functioning and going along just the way it always was. But there was a shift in the spirit. Spiritually speaking, things are changed. Things are different. Okay, But everybody sees things still going along just as they always have. But just give it a little time, sometimes more, sometimes less, and it's going to come around and manifest exactly what already took place in the spirit. Because the physical always follows the spiritual. Let me pause it for a second here. All right, it was just the next chapter over, but I also wanted to show you this in Genesis 15 first, because this is where our father Yahweh actually entered into a covenant with Abraham, right? Now there's several places where he promised Abraham, to make of him great nations and see his seed as numerous as the dust of the earth, as numerous as the stars of heaven, okay, etc., etc. Several times where our father Yahweh promised him amazing things to our grateful father Abraham, right? But here is where he actually entered into a covenant with him. But I also want to show you here that it's always been about faith, okay? In Genesis 15:6, it's just that faith was in the background, and when Yahweh came on the scene, it moved to the foreground. Okay, and he believed in Yahweh, he's referring to Abraham, and he, our father Yahweh, counted to him, Abraham, for righteousness. See, because he believed. And what is that? That's faith. Okay, so I wanted to show you that it's always been about faith. It's just that faith was more in the background under the old covenant, the first covenant, whereas the deeds of the law was more in the foreground, right? That schoolmaster, that substitute teacher, right? But when Yahweh showed up, the substitute teacher took a step back for the true teacher to step to the front and take over the class. See? And the faith is what gets us to justification, deliverance, and salvation, not the law. The law was never intended to do that, and the law cannot do that. Not because there's anything wrong with the law, but because we are incapable of keeping it perfectly. See? But then here in 15, and Genesis 15 and 11, and when the fowl, I wanted to point this out because it says here, when the fowls came down upon okay, you read here, I'm trying not to get all this, right? I was a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove and a young pigeon, and he divided them and laid them out and all that, just as the father, just like, let me see, and he said, Adawan Yahweh, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? Yeah, so Abraham did it as the father had said, and then when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Okay, why is that there? Why is that there? Through the Spirit, I believe that's there because, what was that? Jeremiah. You got to understand that everything's spiritual, right? Is that Jeremiah 12:9? Yes. Mine heritage, talking about the nation of Israel, us, is unto me as a speckled bird. Okay, because you got Israelites in all different shades and colors looking like all the different heathen nations that were scattered amongst due to genetic mixing, not blood mixing. Okay, people don't understand how ignorant they sound when they talk about mixed blood. There's no such thing. And the medical world knows that. Esau knows that. But they allow that manner of speech to persist, and they even propagate it further because it suits their purposes. It keeps people all confused, looking at the outward shell instead of the the spirit that is within a man, which is determined by the bloodline. Okay, all right. But the medical world knows this. Esau knows this. There's no such thing as mixed blood. Okay, you are of the nation and the people that your father is of. Okay. So whatever blood's flowing through your veins, it came from your father, 100%. All right. Mine heritage, the Israelites, is unto me as a speckled bird. And we looking like all the nations that we're scattered amongst. So we look like all the different nations. That's why we're a speckled bird. Whereas the other nations, for the most part, for all intents and purposes, the Edomites would be an exception to this as well. Right? But generally, a lot of them still look like Edomites. Okay, I would say the nation that is the most diverse in what we look like would be us, because we've been scattered amongst the heathen nations. And when you put Israelite men amongst the heathen women, well, you know what happens. Okay, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Esau don't get down like that. Yeah, he do a little something, this, that, there, and another in wickedness. Okay, all kinds of nasty shit, but he don't really get down like we do. He don't get down like we do at all. So yes, you're gonna have some Edomites looking like the other nations, and you have Edomites looking like us, but majority of Edomites look like they typically would look like, which is so-called white people. Okay, they would be probably second to us with regards to their genetic mixing, though. Okay, because they have rulership of the earth, so they're taking the women of these various heathen nations as concubines. So they do that, and they look like us because they had our women as concubines in hardcore slavery. And there's Edomites that have been chocolate covered for generations, but they're Edomites because their bloodline goes back to Esau, no matter how brown their skin is. Okay, some of them browner than me, darker than me, right? But mine heritage, the Israelites, that's us, is unto me as a speckled bird. The birds, okay? The birds, and you notice over there. No, we're not likening it to vultures, okay? But however, I am going to tie that directly back to what we're reading in Genesis, okay? In the NLT, it says vultures. Let's see what here in the first bird is H5861, and the second bird is the same. So let's open it up and see what it says. It says bird of prey, a swooper, and you see there, it's been translated to fowl, bird, and ravenous bird, a hawk or other bird of prey, and it doesn't even mention that it was translated to vultures because it has. We just saw it, so they left that out. What's this say? Scream, shriek, okay, swoop upon, rush upon, yeah, okay. But you see there, they didn't even include the vultures at all. Let me see here. Yeah, they didn't put that in here at all. Okay. But they did. They did translate it. Maybe they had it in that other part, but I'm not going to look at it. It's not that important. Okay, but you see here, that's because it's going off of the King James Version. That's why they didn't put it there. Okay, that's fine. Right? Mine heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. The birds round about are against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. See, so these other nations are likened unto birds, right? The other nations we're likened unto birds too, but the other nations are likened unto birds, right? And when the fowls, the birds, came down, let's see if it's the same word. Yep, it is. H5861. See? Came down upon the carcasses. Yeah, because they wanted to partake. And what's for us? The other nations want to partake in our blessing and in our promises and in the covenants. Okay, going back to the heathen nations that came to Zerubbabel and the other leaders of the people. All right. And they wanted to, they said, hey, we served your God. We worship your God as you do. Hey, let us help you build the temple. And what is Zerubbabel and the other chief priests, not chief priests, the other chief people, the other chief rulers of the people, what did they do? They drove those birds away. So they say, you have nothing to do with our God. You have nothing to do with our power. Okay, we will build a temple unto our power, but you have nothing to do with this. In other words, they got rejected hard. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Get the hell out of here. Okay, you got nothing to do with this. You got nothing to do with this. That's what they were told by Zerubbabel and the other chief rulers, the other rulers of the people. Okay, and so through the Spirit, that's what this is getting into, as a spiritual representation of these birds coming down upon the carcasses, which were for the covenant service, and Abram drove them away. Okay, you heathen have nothing to do with it. Okay, he drove them away. All right, and that's why, where is it? There it is. That Baruch says it very well. Okay, you don't have to like it. It's true. Baruch 4, what's that, 3? Give not thine honor to another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. Okay? O Israel, happy are we, for the things that are pleasing to the Most High are made known unto us. Okay? We're not to give our honor to you heathen. No, we drive you away. Get out of here. You can't get, what are you talking about, salvation for you? Salvation is only for Israel. Okay? Get out of here. Get out of here. Scat. Nor the things that are profitable, deliverance and salvation, the promises, everything, unto thee to a strange nation, which is any of you heathen nations. Okay? Y'all are a strange nation. Okay? You all of you. Okay? So that's why that's why this was set up in the spirit. Everything's spiritual. And it was recorded here. Okay? You know, there was a lot of things going on. Okay? But it didn't record it here. But here, there it is right there in verse 11 of chapter 15. It's recorded that those fowls came down upon the carcasses for the covenant ceremony. And Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. Okay? The Most High put a deep sleep on Abram at the time. And lo, and horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he started to see these visions, right? But the Most High put Abram to sleep. A deep sleep. Okay? Because this right here had everything to do with our Father Yahweh and his faithfulness and what he was going to do. And nothing with Abram. Okay? It didn't depend on Abram. What Abram brought to the table was his belief in what the Most High was saying. That faith that was pleasing to the Most High. So outside of that, the Most High was the end all be all to this. Abram wasn't even awake. He was asleep. The Most High took it. And he did it. So this covenant that the Most High is establishing with Abraham depends 100% entirely on the faithfulness of our Father Yahweh. So that means no matter what, it's going to be done. Okay? There's nothing we could do to mess it up. Because it's 100% based on our Father Yahweh's faithfulness and what he's going to do. Okay? You read up in here. That's what it is. Let's take a look. Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. Okay? Let me see. He says he's going to give him a son. Okay? And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. Okay? In other words, if you can number the stars, then you can number your descendants. Can't number the stars. Can't number the stars. So many trillions upon trillions upon trillions of stars. It's an innumerable, incalculable number. The Most High knows the number because he's the Most High. But outside of that, it's an innumerable, immense, probably bordering infinite, if not infinite, number. Okay? And there's more being created all the time, right? So you can't number the stars, man. That's the seed. Now, show me in here where there's any conditions on what Abraham does. It's not there. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. Let me see here. And this is where you get into it. But it's all about our Father Yahweh and what he's going to do for Abraham and his seed. And when you read this, our Father Yahweh goes over this multiple times in multiple places, and he never puts any restrictions or conditions on the seed. In other words, I'm going to do this for you and your seed if your seed is faithful. I'm going to do this for you and your seed if your seed keeps my laws, commandments, and statutes perfectly. He never says that at all because there's nothing we can do to mess it up. Now, he has it written where we're going to fail at it the first time, but then he's going to, and then we're going to go through a terrible time, which is what we've been through, but then he's going to bring it to an end, which is where we're at now. Give us deliverance and salvation, the ones of us that are of the elect, which repent. The rest he's going to judge harshly, but then they're still going to be in the kingdom because they're his seed too, and them messing it up doesn't stop them from being his seed, the seed of Abraham, and getting the blessing. It doesn't stop anything. It's the way of the transgressor is hard. But guess what? They still have a way. There's a way that is the easier way. Okay? And there's a way that's the hard way. But both are way. They're still going to get there. It doesn't depend on us. It doesn't depend on us not messing up. Matter of fact, us messing up is the plan. Even the ones that get it right on this side, us, all of us, them too, messing up on this side is the plan. But then the ones that are going to get deliverance and salvation on this side, we eventually repent and get it right. Yahweh Razah be counting us that number. I do hope, trust, and believe that I am. We repent and get it right, and we get deliverance and salvation, and we enter into the rest of our Father Yahweh. Those that don't get it right on this side, well, that's the plan for them too. Those are the transgressors. The way of the transgressors is hard. They go the hard way. But guess what? They're still going to go a way, and they're going to get there. The hard way is a way. It's not a no way. It is a way. They're still going to get there. What I'm pointing to you out to you is that our Father Yahweh's faithfulness to do what he said for Abraham doesn't at all depend on Abraham, doesn't at all depend on any of us. Okay? Abraham, of course, Isaac is a special case, right? Because Isaac in the reincarnation is Yahushai, right? Or Jacob, or any of the seed, the 12 patriarchs, or any of us. In other words, there's nothing we can do to mess it up. We're just down here following the plan that our Father has laid out for us for our training. See? And when the sun, and so Abraham was asleep because this is all on the Father. Okay? This is all on the Father and what he's going to do. Okay? And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness. Check this out. And he said unto, and he is the Most High Yahweh, our Father. And he, the Most High, said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed, I feel a point coming on. We're about to make a point, aren't we? Because what's the foundational groundwork we're laying down? Yes, that there's two groups of Gentiles, two groups of foreigners, two groups of heathen, two groups of strangers. And that one of those groups of strangers, as well as the rest, are Israelites. It's two groups, and one of the groups is Israelites. Well, boom, shaka laka laka laka. This verse makes that plain. Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger. Well, his seed here is the Israelites. Yes. And the Israelites, his seed is going to be a what? Stranger in a land that is not theirs. Right. I told you, every time you see the term stranger, foreigner, heathen, and Gentile, you got to make sure you know which group it's talking about, because there's two groups. Sometimes you see this term in the English stranger, it's talking about the natural born heathen. Sometimes you see it's talking about Israelites, like it is here, and here it's very plain to see. In a land that is not there. Now, another way you can know is by looking up the word behind it. Here it is the Hebrew word gar, or I believe that's the correct pronunciation. Yeah, gar. This one right here, when you see this word, it's almost always talking about Israelites. Okay? But you see here, of foreigners in Israel, though conceded rights. So why would foreigners in Israel be conceded rights? So in other words, given rights that pertain to actual Israelites. Why would foreigners in the land of Israel be given rights that are for actual Israelites? Because they are Israelites. See? So, the other definitions are what they are. But that's the point I wanted to show you, because it's right there, which is the main point of this foundational groundwork. There's two groups of foreigners, heathen, strangers, Gentiles. Two groups. One of the groups is Israelites. See? And that's why I wanted to show you that. But then, see, so this covenant was established here. Let's get down here. See? And the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram. So the Most High entered into this covenant with Abram, which the Most High had it all on his shoulders, of course. All right, Abram was asleep, right? Saying, unto thy seed have I given this land. If they follow my commandments, if they do what I said, if they faithful, if they don't mess it. No, it's not there. Unto thy seed have I given this land, point blank period. From the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth, right? So, our Father Yahweh entered into a covenant with Abraham, and he was uncircumcised. He didn't get circumcised till over here. Genesis 17, 2 chapters later. Abraham and the covenant of circumcision. Okay? And you get all the way down here, the Father's giving him all of this. He's talking to him all of this and going through all this with him. Okay? And, he's having a conversation with Abraham, his friend, right? His name is Abraham now, right? Okay? But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, right? I got a covenant with you, Abraham. I'm gonna pick that. I'm gonna keep that going with Isaac, and then I'm going to keep it going with Jacob. Esau, I hate him. I rejected him. He's a reprobate. Okay. But Jacob, I loved. Okay. Malachi, the 1st chapter. And he left off talking with him, and the Most High went up from Abraham. And what did Abraham do after this conversation? And Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all that were born in his house, which Ishmael was the son of the bondwoman. Okay, he's not the son of the promise. He's a heathen. He's the forefather of the modern day Arabs. Okay, they're the descendants of Ishmael. They're the Ishmaelites. They're one of the top heathen nations that have conspired against us to enslave us, working with the Edomites, which is the top nation. So the nation that is second most guilty would be Ishmael. They're the second most guilty. Look at the way Ishmael was giving Isaac a hard time, because Ishmael was like 13 years older than he was a lot older than Isaac, and he was giving Isaac a hard time. Okay, he was giving Isaac a hard time. And that was a representation of them, how they treat us, they've treated us over these thousands of years. So they are the second nation listed in the 83rd Psalm with regards to those that have been against us. Okay, the 83rd Psalm, they listed second. Edom's first, then them. So they're going to get it pretty bad in the kingdom of heaven. Okay? All right. They are closely related to us, but they're a heathen nation. Okay? They do come from Abraham, but they are a heathen nation. The only son that comes from Abraham that matters, in any level, is Isaac. Okay, Ishmael, he did get a blessing. Right? Ishmael, along with the other 6 sons, they don't matter. That's why when the Most High spoke to Abraham over here, he says, what's that, 19? No, I'm not going to get it right. But he speaks to him a little bit later, and he says, take Isaac, thine only son, Isaac. And he refers to Isaac, the Most High refers to Isaac as Abraham's only son. And you go into the book of Hebrews, and Isaac is called Abraham's only begotten son, because the other sons don't matter. They're heathen. Right? Yes. You can go look those precepts up. So here in Genesis 17, they already entered into the covenant. The Most High put Abraham to sleep and entered into a covenant, established a covenant with Abraham, and he wasn't even circumcised. Here in Genesis 17, this is where he's circumcised. He circumcised Ishmael. You can read it in accordance with the instructions of the father. He circumcised Ishmael and every male in the house, even the heathen slaves. The heathen servants, they were circumcised too. Not because they're part of the covenant, but because they're under the authority of Abraham. And they're in his house. And any male in Abraham's house has to be circumcised. Okay? Even if they're a heathen. Okay? And that is a picture of how it's going to be in the kingdom of heaven. Because in the kingdom of heaven, the heathen nations are never going to be partakers of the second covenant. However, they will be made to keep the laws, commandments, and statutes, and to live righteously. And that's what this is a picture of. See? And so this is where Abraham was circumcised, right? And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, which was a physical manifestation of the circumcision of his heart, which had already long taken place, long ago. See? Now, I wasn't intending on getting into that at all, and that's pretty much all the time I have to get into. So we didn't get to this Colossians. So we'll get into that next time, because I wanted to show you 20 and 21. I know I read the whole thing, but that's what I do. And I wanted to show you 26 and 27. Okay? Because this is proving that these believers at Colossae are Israelites. Okay? All of the believers at Rome, all of the believers at Corinth, all of the believers at Colossae, all of the believers at Galatia, Ephesus, Philippi, Thessalonica, they were all Israelites by lineage, by heritage, by bloodline, by birth. Simple as that. Facts. And this proves it, right? We've gotten so much proof already, but this is another proof, more proof. And guess what? There's a whole lot more proof than this. I've already gotten a lot of proof. This is just more proof. And there's a whole lot more proof to get. I haven't even gotten most of it. I'm just getting the proof that's in front of my face. There's proof all over the place. Really, for real. So proof's everywhere. But a lot of the proof that's everywhere, you got to have a deeper level of understanding to see it, right? So, I'm just getting the stuff that's just like right there on the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there for tonight because, like I said, I do have to get up early tomorrow. And so I can't be up too much later tonight. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Before I do, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shabbat, Recha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching, pushing this truth out the four corners of the earth. Adawam, Radazad, that's what's edifying, encouraging to you, Achim, and the Achwaf that may be listening and or watching. Ayashme Akwana, Azanyim Lashemai Shemai. Let him who has ears to hear. Kwam Yasharala, Baba Kwasha, Abai Babal Aitha, Wakal Adawam. Shalom Lahabacharim, Shalom.